Okay then, everybody. Hello, everybody. So I hope you've enjoyed our first talk of today. That will be going up on YouTube. And that was about the social model of disability. So if you missed that, feel free to check it out. So now we have a talk now from Paul Duncan, who's a senior design technologist and accessibility advocate at Amazon. He'll be speaking on designing innovative and accessible products.
This should be a really interesting talk discussing how accessibility is the mother of invention.
This should be a really interesting talk, really interesting talk discussing how accessibility is
Sorry, I think you just got off. If you have any questions, we'll take them at the end. So please put them in the chat box below. And without further ado, we'll now hand it on to Mr. Paul.
The talk now.
Cool. So if you can see my screen, that's great because I've got no feedback. So cool. So thank you, Daniel and Project Impact for inviting me to speak at this year's Accessibility Hackathon. Necessity of all invention. They say that necessity in war is very true. So that has led to a host of products that every day we use every day. Cool. So for example, in war, they came up with the super glue, disposable razors, microwaves, duct tape, jet engines, GPS, and also Napoleon used canned goods to support his troops feeding. War was also responsible for countless life-altering injuries, and after the war, funding was given to assist veterans. So the Popular Science magazine from February 1949 featured an article about a machine that scanned images using optical recognition in order to read aloud to blind people. This machine may not have been successful, but the technology was. And this is one invention that was driven out of the need to find solutions for disabilities that end up doing other stuff. Because there's a lot of people in the world with disabilities, there's lots of numbers that you can see. And they have necessities. And this has led to key inventions that started off solving individual things for people with disabilities, but ended up benefiting everybody. So I'd like to share some of those, and especially because at the moment you're focusing on specific problems, but you'll never know where they may end up and where they'll lead. So I'm Paul Duncan, as they mentioned, I'm a design technologist working at Amazon. I promote inclusive and universal design, and as an accessibility advocate, trying to ensure we build accessibility from the start. I also went to UCL, that's my NUS card, and I studied physics back in the 80s, which I guess makes me old. One of the consequences of aging is, of course, our bodies change. So a lot of the work I do for accessibility is really working on behalf of my future self. So I'm also a Green Bay Packers fan. And I don't know if you know that the huddle began in 1894 when a deaf footballer, Paul Hubbard, the quarterback at Gallaudet University, got his team to huddle around him to prevent the other scenes from seeing him communicate the plays using sign language. Oh, good morning. The typewriter, for example, Pellegrino Turri was a notable mechanic who was in love with the Countess Carolina Antonio de Vizano. And it was customers at the beginning of the 18th century that the two regularly exchanged letters. The Countess's eyesight, unfortunately, deteriorated. So Turri invented a mechanical typing machine so that she could write him letters without her needing to pass everything through a scribe and share her thoughts and her love for him through other intermediaries. And Turri was also credited with inventing the carbon paper to provide ink for his machine. And whilst the machine is lost, Some of the letters still remain today. Curb cuts. So back in the 60s, getting around a wheelchair was kind of tricky. Getting onto pavements presented problems. There was an activist named Edward Roberts, and with his rolling quads, as they were known, they rode around at night with bags of cement, creating ramps. And of course, today they're now everywhere. Curb cuts are everywhere, and they benefit everybody, not just people in wheelchairs, but baby buggies, shopping trolleys, hipsters on skateboards who don't want to spill their frappuccinos, stuff like that. So I don't know if you've heard of Dean Carman. Dean Carman is an inventor, and he's founded his company, which focuses on medical innovations to improve lives around the world. And one of the things he focused on was the wheelchair. The wheelchair hasn't really evolved much from their evolution. This is an 18th century wicker chair, which is obviously a wheelchair. So he invented the iBot. I don't know if you've come across the iBot. It's quite an amazing wheelchair that goes up. So it elevates people in wheelchairs so they can actually speak at eye level. It also goes upstairs. Obviously, it's expensive, and whether this was a great invention, we don't know. But in order to get funding, when he removed the seat and the wheels and stuff from the top, he ended up turning out to make the Segway. The Segway came around through this person's desire to design something for accessibility, to design a better wheelchair. He ended up inventing the Segway. At Amazon, we got requests from customers who wanted to listen to audiobooks, but the Kindle doesn't have a speaker, and so they couldn't do that. So Amazon created the Kindle audio adapter. But one of the things about the audio adapter, you had to plug it in by USB, and everybody knows a USB, there's only 2 ways it can go in, but somehow it always takes us 3 ways to go in. So the Kindle audio player, the USB on that actually has a little lump at the top to let you know which is the top. And that would be a good idea for everybody. Davin Stowell, he's the founder of Smart Design 40 years ago, and he pioneered the concept of universal design in everyday products, designs that work for everybody. This is the classic potato peeler, which has a great rating on Amazon, but it also has a bunch of poor reviews. After peeling more than one potato, some of the metal parts dig into my hand. Poor design. And in 1989, Sam Farber was watching his wife Betsy struggle with a common vegetable peeler as she set out to make some stuff. So he decided to try and make an ordinary peeler that could be used by everybody. So he worked with Smart Design, and they used a technique called extreme design to help develop the OXO potato peeler. So what do we mean by extreme design? So normally when we look at personas, when you're in the design world, you often say you have personas and you'll have this. And most of the time they focus on our typical or average customer. And in extreme design, we don't care about that. We want to look at people at the edges, people struggling, and the people who are the most proficient. So this fits in with the principles of universal design, the belief that everything should be accessible by the broadest spectrum of people. So basically focus on people with varying abilities. So he looked at people with the least able to use potato peeler, people with arthritis or hand problems, but also he used experts, so he used sous chefs who use knives every day, looking at the 2 extremes. And he thought if you do that, the people would be in the middle and happy. The people in the middle would be happy. And this is what they came up with, the OXO potato. If you don't have one, I would recommend it. It's fantastic. As you can see, it's got a lot of great ratings on Amazon. The only potato peeler you will ever need and want. If I could marry it, I would, said one customer. It does have a few low ratings, and that's actually because it's really, really sharp. I normally pass one round when I'm doing a talk, but I strap on the protective things because it's sharp, because sous chefs won't use it, but it also makes it very easy to use. I've just heard that you've actually already had a bit about the medical model of disability, the social model of disability, but for anybody who missed it, I'll just be quick. So the medical model of disability defines a physical impairment of the individual and its social consequences. It regards the limitations of people with disabilities resulting primarily or solely from their impairments. So basically we're saying it's a limitation conferred on their body, it's their body's problem, it's their problem. When we look at the social model of disability, it distinguishes between impairment and disability, identifying the disability as a disadvantage that stems from a lack of fit between a body and its environment. there's a great little podcast by called Hero Bites, and it's about a lady who explains this by saying when she lived in the suburbs, she couldn't get a job, so she was reliant on her parents, and everybody was telling her that she was going to disabled, and it disabled her. But then she moved to New York, where she'd get public transport. She got a job. She felt like she was contributing, and she was teaching and learning. So the environment was disabling her. So Jamie Knight, who's a BBC accessibility specialist, he always says that when we're building something, our goal is to make sure our apps, our website, our services, or what products we're building don't disable people. And I prefer this way around of thinking. It's our job to make sure that our products are accessible and the things we build are used by everybody. And it helps reinforce that the burden is on us, not on the people or the technologies they use. So that was some things. So thank you very much for inviting me. And I thought this might be relevant because while you're solving individual specific problems you've chosen, you might come up with something that benefits everybody. So hack, have fun, and build a better world. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that talk, Mr. Paul. If there are any questions, we take them now. So if you could just drop it in the chat box below and we'll then read it out. Okay, so there's a question about how to include people in certain ways where the technology itself is limiting.
Yes, always one of the best things to do is to actually make sure that you involve the person. There's an expression, never for us, without us, or something like that. Which basically, if there are problems with the technology, the limitations of stuff like that, then you really need to test and get people in to test and work with them. So you work with them to find a ways around these problems rather than do something. But yes, you're right. Limitation. I work on the webs, and there's, the technology moves fast, and the screen readers can't keep up, and things like that. So yeah, but yes, testing with real customers.
Okay, thank you for the answer. Thank you, Mr. Paul, for the great insight into accessible products. I'd like to close off by saying a quote which was there in your presentation. It is our goal to make sure our products don't disable people. So I hope that's a key takeaway we can take from here, so that when the participants do come up with their ideas, they kind of take it on themselves to make sure that they don't exclude the people. And I think the idea of catering to the extremes on both sides of the spectrum is a good way to ensure that everyone in the middle is also catered to. So those are a few good takeaways, which I know I'll be taking on myself as well. So thank you to all the participants for joining in. Please keep the hard work on your projects and ideas for creating a better world through improving the design and including better people, the disabled people. So that's all for now. We do have our next talk, which is going to be at 1 p.m. So see you then. And thank you so much, Mr. Paul. So
thank you very much for your time.
For joining in. Yes.